welcome to the Art of Decluttering podcast. I'm your host, Amy Revell. Today, I have an amazing guest with me. I have Tidy Dad Tyler Moore. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks for having me.
Tyler is best known to his 390,000 odd followers on Instagram as Tidy Dad. He's a dad to three. So you're a girl dad and I'm a boy mum. So we have very different experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. But life is busy, hey? No matter how many people you have in your home, life gets busy. And that's what you experienced when you were a New York City school teacher. You know, when I was listening to your book and reading your book, I did both. I listened and read, and I found it really helpful. So listeners, that's my pro tip for Tyler's book. But you felt like life was chaotic, a little bit like an overstuffed closet where it's chaos inside, but you just about managed to close the doors so people think it's all acceptable and all is going well. So you talk about that in your new book, Tidy Up Your Life. Tell me a bit about what that looked like for you, where you kind of the string broke and you were like, enough is enough. We can't continue like this.
Well, I'm sure that's an analogy that a lot of listeners can relate to because we have become very good at projecting to the world that we have it all together. It's really easy to put on this facade of this sort of picture perfect life that has followed and ticked all of the boxes. And it's so rare that we actually sort of confront that inner sort of clutter that we have, let alone share it with others. And I think for me, my story, really for my wife and I, we followed that straight lined path. We checked all the boxes, went to school, went to grad school, got the job, moved to New York City, got the promotion, then starting having children. And it wasn't until really our second daughter was born that I feel like all of those strategies that I had used to maintain tidiness started to break down. And that's something that listeners can relate to too, that you feel like, well, I was able to hold it all together until that one thing happened. And for many people, it could be a breakup, the death of a loved one, moving across the country, losing a job, transitioning to a brand new job, quitting school, graduating school, whatever it may be. There are these times where we're under extreme pressure. And for me, it was having a 2-year-old and a baby at home while also taking on a promotion at my school to become a school administrator where I was managing adults and kids and dealing with parents. And I felt like my capacity for what I could do was completely outmatched, not to mention we were still in our 750 square foot small New York City apartment, where we actually still live to this day. But there weren't all those systems in place. And I was more so like, what in the world do I do? And so there's nothing like a mental health breakdown and taking leave from a job to sort of give you an opportunity when your wife is leaving to go shopping with her sister to say, I'm going to flip rooms in our apartment and it's going to be so great. I just have to show you. And then you actually sort of implode.
Yeah,
everything.
Enthusiastic Tyler was like right into that, right? As I'm reading the book, I'm quite a visual person and I was picturing you like, no, I'm going to do, this is going to work. No. I'm a capable human. I manage adults and students and parents. I can do this. And then it all just falls apart when she walks back in. It's like, honey, what's going on?
Because I opened up all of the cabinets, all of the wardrobes. You can't just move furniture from one room into the other room and everything is going to fit perfectly. And mind you, we're in what we call a railroad style apartment, which means that you have to walk through one room to get to the other. So the rooms are like glorified hallways to one another.
Yep.
And so there was no way in a very short period of time that I could move everything. But I also feel like in moments of crisis, what many of us will do is we think, I can just take on the world right now. And if only I fix X, Y, or Z, then suddenly everything is just going to feel so much better. And while that can be true for some, that wasn't the result for me, that it actually created this much bigger sort of mess that I had to deal with. But through the mess and through sorting all of that clutter, I do feel like you teach yourself skills and truths, and you learn some things that then make you better equipped to handle what was the root of that mess in the first place.
Yeah, it's not like making the decision to make that room swap was a bad decision
Mm-mm.
because you actually had got to the point where something needed to change. And sometimes, like, just going all in is a great way to then discover, like, what's really going on. And that kind
Mm-hmm.
of was the catalyst for you. So, as much as you ended up in more mess, it uncovered and kind of allowed you to then start this journey to, tidy daddom, which we'll call it the kingdom of tiny dad.
Do love that. But it's true because as I'm like sorting my socks and underwear, we were thinking about closets and what actually made sense to go there, as we were editing our daughter's toys, thinking about, do we actually like sleeping on top of stuff? Because
Mm.
there are all of those organizers and bins that can go underneath your bed, which is a helpful organizational strategy. But it was like, what actually makes sense to go there? And I feel like, it's borrowing a line from Marie Kondo's book, which we used as a sort of a helpful guide. She talked about at the end about how all of these people have these sudden sort of like life realizations as part of tidying. And I read that. I skipped to Our apartment was in chaos. I skipped to the very end because sometimes I'll do that with books. And I was rolling my eyes. I was like, Marie Kondo, this is the silliest thing that I've ever heard of. First of all, you're telling me to hug my stuff and say thank you to it. And then now you're telling me that sorting all of this junk is going to lead to this huge life realization. I was like, this is the silliest thing that I've ever heard. And then 4 months later, we're like finishing up our tidy. We're like putting things away. And I turned to my wife and I was like, I don't think I want to be a school administrator anymore. I actually think I was so much happier as a teacher. Do you think that I should just ask to go back to the classroom? And she was like, yeah, might as well. And then I was like, Marie Kondo, she was right.
She was right. And it was all
But
worth it.
it was all worth it. It was all the blood, sweat, and tears. But I do think that it's the part of decluttering that I love sharing with people, is that when we start to learn things about ourselves, when we hone our decision-making skills, when we, from a granular level, even think about, what do I actually want from my silverware drawer? Like, when I open it up, what is it about the feel of the fork or the knife? How do I want them to lay on one another? What do I want the pattern? I do feel like when you take something like your knives and forks and spoons that are actually very inconsequential to your life, you can then think about much more consequential things. And what do I want from my time and my energy, my habits? What do I want for my family? What do I want for my own outlook on life? I think that's the part of decluttering that is so powerful. And that's what I try to share, even now as Tidy Dad, all of these years later, from that huge, epic decluttering sort of situation we had.
I think, Tyler, when you're talking about that silverware drawer, like, what do I want from the forks and knives? The beauty of making that decision is that you probably don't have to think about that drawer and all of the contents in it for years to come,
Mm-hmm.
because you make it streamlined, you make it work for you, not just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, there's this random mismatch of all the things. And so giving those things time actually means that you give it less time overall, which gives you time to go, oh, maybe I don't want to be managing all the things. And maybe I like being a classroom teacher, or maybe I want to be a stay-at-home parent, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
I just want to have more adventures around the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
It's
so
pretty
true
powerful.
because before all this happened, I would stand on the playground and you talk to different parents, and I would just get this sort of like jealousy or envy, or this feeling of, they're so much smarter and more accomplished than I am, and so much
Interesting.
more brilliant. And here I am just working in a school, and it's all these finance guys or business people. Because in New York City, you interact with so many different people from different walks of life. But the idea is, I've got to pursue more positional power so that I can make more money, so that I can provide better for my family. In the case of New York City, it's then so that people can get the big house outside of the city and then commute in every day. That life just didn't make sense to me. And I remember, as part of my sort of internal decluttering work, I also had a wonderful therapist named Suzanne, who just helped me unpack all of the mess that I felt inside. And I remember saying to her, like, why don't I want more power at work? Why don't I want more money? I was like, what is wrong with me? And
The
one of
world
the
says
most,
I should want this.
and she was like, there isn't anything wrong with you. You're just wired differently. And I was like, wow, I've been coming to you every week. I ended up spending 3 years with her. And I feel like she just gave me this crash course in how do you actually declutter your mind as you're working through all of this stuff, at home. And it was just such a powerful intersection of working on mind and space. And I feel like there's still, I'm so proud of myself because so many men, we act like we have it all together. We suffer in silence. When you look at the
Yeah.
statistics around men's mental health, to actually reach out for professional help is just something that many men don't do. And I feel like I'm just so proud of myself for going weekly. And I appreciate the
Mm,
sacrifice of my wife who was
yeah.
watching our young daughters at the time. Um, but even with my therapy journey, I thought it was a couple issue. And I read about this in the book that we went to couples therapy together with Suzanne. And halfway through one session, Suzanne was like, Tyler, I really think that you could benefit from individual
Why don't you
therapy.
come
And,
alone next time?
but I left and I was like, Emily, that's what my wife said. I was like, Emily, I think Suzanne really likes me. Like, I think she really likes my stories. Did you hear her say that she wants me to come by myself? And my wife was like, that's because you need the help.
Yeah, because
And I was
Suzanne
like,
can see what you can't see yet.
yes, but, I think that that's so important to name for people
Mm,
listening because it's okay to tell someone that you need help. It's okay to get professional help and talk to a therapist. And um, I'm just so grateful that I gave myself permission to do that. And all these years later, I'm still thinking about things that I learned. And I know that I'm in a completely different place from where I was, you know, almost
yeah,
10 years ago at this point.
yeah. And I think it's unique to be doing that as a guy who's then not just going through the process, but happy to say, hey, world, this is what it looked like for me. In Australia, we've got, so far as I know, one professional organizer who's a guy. He's awesome. Shout out to Joey. But there's just not a lot of men saying, hey, this is actually important. And I don't want to necessarily just be going for more power, more power. I want to live a life that I feel good in. And ultimately, your book is not just about tidying, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some really great tidying tips and all of that for listeners, but it's about life alignment and
Hmm.
going, what is important to me and how do I live in a way that is congruent with the values that I have? Do you think
Hmm.
that that is something that you're able then to pass on to your girls or that you and Emily are able to have influence on the people around you where you're like, we're actually breaking the mold. And this is why it's not just because we like having a tidy house. Like that's lovely, but that's
Hmm.
almost the outcome of the alignment.
Well, it's so funny because I I ran or completed a triathlon today and I was posting about it online and this woman she messaged me and she was like, I know that you just turned 40. I'm turning 40 also. And she's like, there's something about our generation that just isn't putting things off and waiting anymore. She was like, I feel like we're trying to find joy and meaning now, even in the smallest of things. And that was so reassuring to the message that I'm trying to communicate with people is that my life isn't always picture perfect. I have struggles. There are things that I'm working on in myself. Even talking to people about the triathlon, it's like I've been rehabbing my knee after an injury after a marathon. And like there is so much joy and grit in that struggle. But to see my girls watching me today and cheering me on after they did their own triathlon last
Did
weekend
they,
and
Tyler?
being able to talk to them about because they're always like, well, daddy, what if you don't win? And I was like, my goal is not to win. Literally, the goal today was to complete all three disciplines and not feel pain. But the
Yeah.
comical thing is I was so focused on the run, 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 run. I run across the finish line. 2 minutes later, they page me over the the like announcer person, and they're like, Tyler Moore, can you please come to the booth? And I was like, oh great. And I walk over to the booth, and there's this woman sitting there at a computer, and she's checking everyone's times. And she was like, did you run? And I was like, what do you mean, did I run? This whole race was about the run for me. I've been rehabbing my knee. And she was like, well, your transition from bike to run, we didn't actually capture your time. So do you remember when you crossed the finish line? And I was like, are you kidding me? So
No,
that
if
I had to walk back to my daughters, and they were like, Daddy, what did you get in trouble? And I was like, no. They asked me if I ran. And it was this like comical, lighthearted moment, especially
Tyler.
because I've literally been rehabbing my knee so that I could run. But it's showing them also that messes happen. I am not perfectly perfect and put together. And I talk to them about even teaching. My daughters go to the same school where I teach. We live 6 blocks from my school. I literally walk them to school every day. I walk home on my lunch break. I eat lunch
Oh,
at my
that's
table when
nice.
my children are still at school. And I
Oh,
sit
even
there
better.
and I eat my lunch and I watch trash TV for that whole 30 minutes. And then I walk back to school.
That's
But
excellent.
but I hope that what I'm teaching them is that life doesn't have to be this linear path, that there are messes that we all encounter, but that we all have choices over what we make. And a big question that I got from the girls a few years ago was this question of, Daddy, are we rich or not? Which was
Oh,
fascinating
interesting.
because, and I'm interested too, it's even with your kids, that when they see these much larger homes,
Mm-hmm.
the homes that we live in,
Yeah.
they go over to family, friends. There is this question, which is natural, of, well, why did they have this when we don't have this? And we had this huge conversation around, what does it actually mean to be rich? Because I do think that as Tidy Dad, I'm also trying to show that, to me, rich is not just the amount of money that we have in our bank account. To me, it's time, it's choice, it's freedom, it's
Yeah.
access, it's being able to spend time traveling. But even for me, being off on the school breaks
Mm-hmm.
with my children is such a gift that if I were pursuing that high powered banking career, which I wouldn't last in because I cannot sit still. I would fall asleep. I would lose everyone's money. I wouldn't have all of that time
Yeah.
together. So it's a trade off.
It's a trade-off, but an awesome trade-off. I had this conversation with so I've got 2 young adults, they're 18 and 20, and I had a conversation literally last night with one of them who said, why is our house the smallest of all of my friends? And Tyler, I don't think our house is small. I've got 2 kids, they each have their own bedroom. I have a podcast studio inside our house. Like, it's a nook, but
Uh-huh.
I've got a separate office. My husband has a work from home office. Like, we are by no means in a small home.
Yeah.
We have one living space, which I think is what, in their minds, when they go to their friends' houses and they can all separate off into all the different spaces. And I was like, mate, if we wanted to, we could work towards buying the bigger house, but then we wouldn't be around as much. And then we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do and things that are important to our family. We wouldn't be able to support other people who don't have opportunities like we do. We wouldn't be able to send money overseas. We wouldn't be able to we wouldn't be able to go out for dinner when we want to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
always a trade off.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that as kids and young adults, it's like, yeah, but the cooler house. But I really hope, Tyler, that it sticks, that message, not just for your kids and for my kids, but for our listeners who maybe have never heard that from an adult, to say it's okay not to want the bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
that's great, actually.
Mm-hmm. And I also countered by saying, we all will get to have choices.
Yeah.
Like when you become an adult, you will get to choose
Mm,
what it is that you want to have. I was like, but if you do choose, I would really like one of those pools that are like the infinity pools in your
please.
backyard.
Yes.
Like I want one
Yeah.
where
With a little
if,
granny flat where you can stay if you need to.
I was like, I just need like a pool house. Like I need a
You don't
kitchenette,
ask
like
for
a little
much.
bath. I don't ask for much, but if you
No.
so choose, I would really love that.
That's
And so
right,
then
girls.
they're
If you
like,
go into
okay, Dad.
banking, I'll support you.
Right. Right. But yeah, we do have choices. And I think it's giving ourselves permission, because I think back in my 30s and I'm like, what was the alternative? It was me trying to prove myself to
Yeah.
all of these strangers who actually didn't have that much of a vested interest in my overall happiness or well-being. And just the amount of ruminating of what can I do to be smarter or stronger or faster or more competent or more capable, while also having these little children at home. And I just wanted to spend time with them and feel like I had emotional and physical energy to be the type of dad that I wanted to be. And so they're obviously, my kids are a little bit young for that type of conversation, but I hope that they see from the choices that we've made that we're not pursuing the newest car, the biggest
Yeah.
house, the latest in tech. Um,
Hmm.
we sort of like intentionally go without so that we can have other experiences. That
Yeah.
then the flip side to that is I get a lot online of people who are saying, well, that must be nice. Well, that must be nice. And I've started to get a little bit more bold and I'm like, it is nice.
It is nice.
But
It's great to have the freedom to do that.
I've also given up X, Y, and Z in order to make this what you view as must be nice possible. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard when you're sharing stuff online and you ultimately sometimes you just want to share all your values, but the outcome is important because that's also the why. Like it's you can't please everyone.
no, and it's why even online people rooted for me because last summer we had a car that it was a 2000 Chevy Malibu, this
Yeah.
little tiny car that by last summer was 25 years old. And we had been driving that and driving that and driving that. And then finally it died and
Yeah.
we had to get a new used car that we did very economically. It's really small and compact because we have to park it in New York City. But it was nice how many people were so encouraging that they were like, Tidy Dad, we are so glad that you got that new little white car. So it is funny that it's the when
Yeah.
you do share those, like the struggles, but also sort of the process and how we were happy with that 2000 Chevy Malibu until it
Yeah.
kept dying on us. And then we actually needed to spend money on something that was safe and reliable. That's the other counter to this is
Mhm.
like, I don't think that either of us are saying never spend money on things, but
It's
when
not
you
about
truly align
deprivation.
it with your values,
Yeah.
like you've got to make space for what's actually important and what
Yeah,
matters to you. And we're all different.
deprivation for deprivation's sake is self-flagellation. Like it's that's not what we're advocating. We're advocating freedom. And freedom will look different for each person, but it is worth pursuing. It's absolutely worth it. I want to go through a couple of like little phrases in your book. So the joy of listening and reading is I was like, oh, I have to ask Tyler about that. Oh, I have to ask Tyler about that. The first one that stuck out to me is the idea of that your home isn't always tidy, it's easy to tidy. So I talk to my community about 15 minutes from being organized is organized. Because if someone was to come and they were like, I'm 20 minutes away, you can get your home to a place where you're comfortable and happy to host. So, what for you shifted from the it has to always be tidy to it just has to be easy to tidy? Because that's a
Hmm.
pretty significant shift.
It is. It's a huge shift. And I think at first, the always tidied, I think the hardest part for me in the day was when I had been teaching all day and I was walking in and I sort of walked into the chaos of our apartment, which was sort of natural with two little kids at the time. My wife was like in the kitchen cooking. I had been working all of these hours at school and I would just walk in and feel this huge overwhelm. And I think that there are seasons of life where that is sort of natural, that there is life unfolds in a home. But what's different for us now is that we all have systems that we understand and that we're able to work together. Because that idea of being easily tidied, what comes before that is you have to know where things go. And like my
Yeah.
wife and I just did it now before I got on the call with you because our next door neighbors were at our cottage in Pennsylvania where we're in the summer times. The next door little neighbors, girls came over to play with our daughters. And I was like, let's quickly put these things, and it's what you just described. In like 5 minutes, things were like put away, the towels were put away, we had put away the dishes, the couch was clear, and that's the goal. Life unfolds in our homes, but when it's easily tidied, it just means that you know where to put things, which sounds
Yeah.
simple, But yet I think that there's so much freedom in that.
And you remove the decision fatigue. If
Mm-hmm.
in my home things didn't have homes, they didn't have a place to belong, and I was like, quick, I've got to tidy, I have to make a decision about every single item that I have to put away. But once items have homes and you have systems, you go into autopilot. You don't have to think,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, I've got excess bath towels that I just got out of the wash. Where in the world am I going to put those? You just put them where they belong. So the
Mm-hmm.
decision fatigue is a huge thing when people start out, but actually having these systems and having it easy to tidy pays off today, tomorrow, the day after, and every single time you ever have to tidy your house, right?
Mm-hmm. And it isn't, because I know that women bear a lot of the mental and emotional load of caring for a home, which I also have tried to take on as tidy dad, because I'm like, I don't understand when men stopped knowing where things were or contributing or knowing how to do laundry or cooking. And I just don't understand when we declared that this was solely a female's
Mm,
responsibility. But I think that in many homes, when there is that one person that has made the system, it then becomes the, hey, mom, where is this? Mom, where is this? Mom, where did you put this? Where? And it's no, as our girls have gotten older, we've almost had to like take them on the tour of
yep,
like,
yep.
this is where this goes. This is where this goes. I need you to do this. And if there's a question about where does something go, I'm happy to show you. But then that means that next time I don't need you asking me
Mm-hmm.
sort of where
And,
things are.
and please don't ask me. Please just figure it out.
Yes.
The next phrase that jumps out at me, Tyler, is about the just enough. And I started to picture in my mind like sitting down at like a Christmas dinner and you're eating and eating, you're eating, and then you get to just enough. And then we push it a bit further until we've had just enough until we feel a bit ill. And I
Mm-hmm.
think so often in our homes, we do the same. Like, I've got
Mm-hmm.
the space, so I'd better fill it.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
there's empty spaces, I'd better buy furniture to fill the space. And then I buy the things to fill the furniture.
Mm-hmm.
How do people know when it's just enough?
So I think that this goes back to the values piece that we were talking about, that I think that we don't really think about how the items in our homes are like serving us and thinking about our hobbies, our interests, our passions. Like if you are someone who loves cooking and loves entertaining, then you should have space for that. It's funny, on Instagram, I don't know how large this woman's house is, but she built a whole entertaining room for herself. And that's where all of her like dishes and plates and the serving ware and the seasonal decor. And on the one hand, I was like, that is completely excessive and out of control. But then I was like, but if you're applying the just enough mindset, why shouldn't she be able to allocate space in her home for that if that's what she
Totally.
loves doing?
Yeah,
Because that's probably meant that she has said, I don't need as much of X, Y, or Z in a different category. That when I think about my own hobbies and interests, that I love running, I love working out, I love weightlifting, and so I need to have space in our little apartment in order to do that. And so what I found with my weights is I use resistance bands, which is very tidy because they fold up into a little bin. But
yep.
like I need in our entryway cabinet, that's where my workout bands go because I use them when we're going to the park. I'll work out at home. But that meant that something else had to go. And I
Mm,
think that when you are able to name for yourself what is just enough in any given category, that really allows you to set boundaries and again, make space for what you actually love and enjoy. If you love painting your nails, if you love cosmetics, if you love shoes, then make space for that. But it may mean that you need to ruthlessly declutter something else that's getting in the way. And a question that my wife and I will often ask ourselves is like, what's getting in the way of us having our ideal bedroom or our
yep.
ideal living space right now? And when you take that orientation, you can start to sort of name that we're like, there are a bunch of books that we're like not reading anymore that we could probably put at the little free library or give to friends. And it's like, okay, let's actually do that. Or if we're feeling like our girls' wardrobes, because we have like a hand-me-down system because they're all just a few years apart. But um, we have to sort of assess as the girls get older, are the clothes that we're hanging on to still in pretty good condition, or is it time to like move them out? What are their different interests or preferences? How do we take those into account? So just enough, I feel like, is so freeing for us. And it's something that we continue to come back to because year to year, season to season, it looks a little bit different.
And so within that, let's go to the example of passing the clothes down from your girls. Because one of the other phrases you talk about, like the hypothetical someday,
Hmm.
and it's the but what if? And it's all these fear based questions often of, but what if I need it, but it costs me a lot of money? But what if someone turns up and they need to borrow that? Or what if a whole family needs to come and I need air mattresses for 4 people? And there's all these hypotheticals that may or may not happen. And I was starting to think as I was reading that part of your book is I wonder if we're holding on to the stuff or we're just holding on to the anxieties, and the stuff um, placates a little bit of our anxiety. Like it makes us feel like, okay, it's fine. I can handle that if it comes.
Hmm.
Tell me a bit more about this hypothetical someday and what that relationship with anxiety is in your mind.
Yeah, well, I think that, travel is a good example because we have very tidy travels that even when we travel internationally, I don't trust any airline carrier to actually take care of my bag. There is nothing that I need that I cannot find somewhere else somewhat quickly in the event of some sort of like dire sort of need. And I think that when we think about those carry-on bags and what we actually put in, you're able to sort of establish priorities or preferences or what you like that I think so often our minds jump without us actually thinking about, well, what would I actually do? And for example, with the air mattress, okay, say that all of your cousins and your aunts, everybody's descending on your house. What would you do? Okay, well, some options. You could go and buy a new air mattress. You could post on a Facebook group for your neighborhood. Hey, does anybody have an air mattress? You could say to the loved ones, it'd be really great. Do you guys have air mattresses? Could you bring them with you? There are often options when we think about, because my wife's parents, they just moved into a home. They had been full-time RVers, but they had been storing all of my wife's childhood toys for that someday when they were going to have grand. And it was a lesson to me because I was like, our girls did enjoy looking at them when they actually had access to them. But like when our girls would have played with them was like 5 years ago,
Yeah,
7
interesting.
years ago. And thinking about it, it's like, are we holding on to things without any projection into the future of what actually might happen? So I'm supposed to hold on to all of my children's toys for the hypothetical someday that they all choose to have children and that they all, and their said children that they hypothetically all have the exact same interests at the
Uh-huh.
same age that my children were when they were able to make choices over toys. It's just a
There
radical
was so many
sort of
ifs that
thing.
yeah, so
Yes,
many
it's so
ifs.
many ifs. And so I think with that hypothetical someday, you obviously want to think about the future, but it's also thinking about the here and now. And I think when you're in that regular cycle of sort of checking in with yourself on what your own wants and needs are, what's serving you right now, what you're ready to move out of your space, decluttering is not a one and done process. It's something that you're sort of continually doing. And that doesn't mean that you're spending every Saturday going through all of your cabinets. It's when you notice something and you're like, you know what? That cabinet is really, it seems to be really stuffed right now. Let me just do a quick, let me pull it out, let me edit it, let me choose what to keep, what to move out, move on. It's choosing things at the end of a season and saying we're about to transition. Let me sort of do an assessment of what am I still wearing? What are my holes? That is sort of a normal part of life that I'm also trying to teach my children because oftentimes they're so much less emotional than I am, but it's because we've equipped them with some of the skills.
That's great to see that they have that less attachment to things is awesome. I find that in our house, Tyler, because we've done the hard work of decluttering, I would say 60, 70% of our stuff over the years. And I wouldn't say we're hardcore minimalists at all. the decluttering now happens when we want to bring something new in. So I wanted to set up a podcast studio. Okay, so the stuff we were storing in here, which was a lot of musical equipment, has had to find other homes. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like that needs based decluttering. Sometimes, can I just confess, sometimes I wander around my house looking for something to declutter because I love it so much. And particularly if I've seen a client and I'm like in declutter mode, I come home and I'm like, I don't really have
Mm-hmm.
anything that I can go through.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and that sometimes happens for people like after you go on a vacation because you've just spent all of this time in a really fabulous space, or when you walk into a hotel room, there is this feeling of calm, and then you walk
Yeah.
back into your space. And I've heard the strategy too of if you actually take photographs of all of the different parts of your home, and then you like sit back and you look at them and you sort of identify what sort of triggers me, or what do I really like love and enjoy about this space, that can help you see things
Yeah.
in a different way, because moving out of an environment and then coming back in can be really revealing.
Yeah. And I call it having fresh eyes because you become visually blind to the
Mm-hmm.
thing on your wall that you put there the week you moved in. And it's kind of been there for 20 years, or the pile near the front door that you don't really see anymore. That's
Right.
a great way of doing it. You talk in your book about this word, let me see if I can get it right,
Surthrival.
surthrival.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference between just surviving and thriving
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to feeling that overwhelm of life, having so many different hats that you wear, maybe just so much stuff around you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, because when you talk about the surthrival, it's that intense period, but I think sometimes we get into chronic surthrival where it's time that something needs to shift. So there's periods where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yep, someone's really sick in the home, and so we are in surthrival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other times when you're like, actually, life hasn't given us anything particularly hard, but I'm not coping
Mm-hmm.
chronically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear about, what is behind surthrival? What does that look
Mm-hmm.
like? And what do
Mm-hmm.
you do if you're like, but I'm permanently there, Tyler, and I can't get out of that mode?
So to me, surthrival, it's those moments in time where you feel like what is expected of you mentally, emotionally, physically is sort of out, sort of running the capacity that you have. And you mentioned like an example, like if you're caring for an aging parent, the death of a loved one, welcoming a new baby into the home, moving into a new job, having a divorce, having your kids move out of the house, go off to these are all times where you're just mentally and emotionally you feel like you're completely stretched. But also, if you can step back, you can also think that there are opportunities for joy or growth, because oftentimes it's those most intense periods of our lives where we're able to step back. Sometimes
Mm,
it's a few days later, a few moments later. It can be years where you're like, actually, I can see how now that was sort of training ground for what was to come. Or when I look back, like even when I think about the newborn stage with our daughters, it was so hard, but also I took paternity leave. And there are times where my wife and I were like, do you remember when we were just, especially with our first baby, because we just had the one, we were just on the baby schedule and we binge watched so many shows. And I remember that I was like, are you sure she's done feeding? Because I really want to finish this episode. We watched Downton Abbey, all the seasons. And that is a moment where I look back and there's such like joy, but also in the moment, it was really, really hard. And so I think, you know, survival, there's seasons that we can all find ourselves in. But yet I also find that there's joy to be found. And I was thinking about when you were talking about sort of that constant state of really, it's like
mm,
survival that people find themselves in. I feel like that's often a moment where you have to stop and ask yourself what could be decluttered right now, be it from schedule or
yeah.
expectations or what is it in my relationship? Because society, I'm sure it's in Australia the same as America, the busier you are and the more frenzied you are, it's almost like the more status and power you have. Because if you're like constantly
Yeah.
sort of running to, oh, I'm sorry, I was so busy, or I only have 5 minutes because I have to do X, Y, or Z, or no, I'm not able to do. like it's almost like people wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah,
Whereas
we
the flip side,
glorify it.
100%,
Yeah.
whereas the flip to that is, again, it's the oh, must be nice. Like when I talk about my summer and I do like an adult swim program that's at like 7 a.m. on Monday and Friday morning. Oh, it must be nice that you have time in your schedule to do that. And I'm like, well, it's because I've decluttered X, Y, or Z. I took a huge step back in my career because I said I didn't want to work, 12 to 14 hours a day, plus give up my summer when I had young kids. And so, there are little things like, I feel like with surthrival, I talk about joy plotting, which is, can you sort of train your brain, even when you envision your week? That it's like on Sundays, if you're sitting down and mapping out sort of what's to come, it's training your brain on how do you notice the little things in addition to the big things. That it's like you can look at a weather forecast and say, oh, Friday it's going to be sunny. Or saying, you know what? We have those really yummy leftovers that I know I'm going to be able to take in my lunch tomorrow. Or it's Friday night and we always do pizza night. There's a new show that's going to come on. Um, a friend's coming into town that I feel like so often we don't think about the big things. We're waiting around for the huge vacations to come. But for many people, the thought of waiting around for that 1 week of that big trip
That's
when you
huge.
have 52 weeks out of the year, I feel like that's such a defeating way to actually look
Mm.
at life. That there's joy to be found now. You just have to open yourself up to sort of like receiving it, noticing it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different to like a gratitude practice, which is a
Hmm.
reflective practice. What I really liked about the joy plotting is it's a forecasting practice where you're going, what do I have to look forward to? And yeah,
Hmm.
it might be that you have the great leftovers, or you've got a meeting with someone that you just really enjoy hanging out with,
Hmm.
or you
Hmm.
get to actually on the way home, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to go for a walk at the park for 5 minutes. Like you start to actually build it into your rhythm rather than
Hmm.
just search for it reflectively, which is also helpful.
It,
Like gratitude is excellent, but joy plotting, like I love it.
and where it came from was I had a colleague when I was early on in teaching, and she gave
Yeah.
me the advice of, let's always try to find that one part of the lesson that we're so excited to teach to the kids. And that's where it
Oh,
started. That if you could look, because in 7 periods of a day,
yeah.
every single sort of period, there should be, what is that? Is it the journal prompt that I'm going to have the kids do? Is it the read aloud that's later? Is it that like brain break activity? What is it that I'm really looking forward to? Because that will get you through your day. And even
That
with
is a great.
running used to be so hard. And somebody said, you literally, when you're running, you jump from like joy sort of thought to joy thought, that you're like, oh, the birds are really nice right now. I can hear them chirping. Or like, look, it's really sunny. Or isn't that bush so beautiful? And it sounds silly, that again, it sort of goes, I made some of Marie Kondo's strategies sound silly, but this is a tidy dad strategy that I know for listeners may sound silly, but it actually can work. And then I feel like the counter to that is like, when I think about physical possessions and sentimental items, that sentimental items aren't meant to sit in a box. They're meant to be out in your home, triggering things, memories, moments. And my grandma, that I was very close to, passed away last October. And my family and I, we went into her home right after she had passed away, which is really hard to sort of do that, like after death sort of clearing and cleaning. And everyone was walking through the house, and people were starting to say, I would like that piece of furniture, I would like this. And I walked up to my dad and I was like, Dad, I know that this sounds really silly, but I think I'm going to take those like really pretty ceiling fan pulls that she has. Because she had ceiling fans and there were these little like pulls with these little like gems on them. And I was like, he was like, I don't think that that's silly. I was like, because I know that I can use them in my apartment. And when I see those little things, I will think of her. And then this summer,
Oh,
somehow I ended up with a concrete squirrel that she had out back of her door. So it's here in our cottage in Pennsylvania. And just last week, I was like, I'm going to give that little squirrel a new life. So I spray painted it. I'm really into bedazzling lately because my girls were into
Wow,
bedazzling.
you're a
So
girl, Dad.
I bedazzled the little squirrel in its hands. It had this little like acorn nut. And so I
Oh,
bedazzled that little nut. And then I put it on a shelf that we have here. But I
yeah,
thought, wouldn't my grandma be so happy that I have that little squirrel with that little bedazzled gem of a nut? And I'm like, as silly as it sounds, like I would hope that she's happy that I'm finding joy with the
yeah.
things that she loved collecting
That's
without
awesome.
feeling like I have to take everything. Like stuff can
Yeah.
be such a burden. You don't need everything. And I'm really learning that one can count for many. So whenever I see that little nut, I just think of my grandma, the little pools on the ceiling fan.
Oh,
But
they are such precious things because if you had bought, like, you just looked around the house and thought, I'll just take as much as I can fit, you wouldn't have been able to enjoy anything, right? But you've got the pools, you've got the squirrel with the nut. Like, I just
and
think
I
that that's
have
great.
she had this little, it was a light switch cover that was a pig. But what's kind of funny is that the pig has a mixing bowl and the light switch goes inside the ladle that the pig is using to mix. So whenever you lift the ladle up and down, the light goes
Yeah,
on and off.
that's
But my
awesome.
grandma had that by her back door
Yeah,
my entire life. And so why
yeah.
wouldn't I want that in my own kitchen to be just reminded of her? And so I think that is, even though we're talking about decluttering and editing,
Yeah.
there is so much power in being surrounded by the things that trigger the memories that make you think of people, that even from your own life that you just love and enjoy, but that doesn't mean that you have to keep everything.
100%. I think your grandma would be thrilled with your decisions because you've edited and you enjoy, like, this is what it's about, right? This is what it's
Yeah.
about. Tyler, I have loved this conversation. I just feel like you've got so much breadth of understanding, and the deep work that you've done, actually you get to share with everybody, which is a pure delight. Where's the best place for people to find you online?
Yeah. So I always joke that if you Google Marie Kondo, she'll come up, or the word tidy, Marie Kondo comes up first, and then me. Little Tidy Dad will come up second. But you can also find me on Instagram. I'm at Tidy Dad. I also have a podcast that's called Tidy Tidbits. My episodes are like 6 to 7 minutes, sometimes a little bit
They're
longer. But
brilliant.
the idea is like, let me just give you a quick sort of tip of something that's working.
Yeah.
And then I also write on Substack at the Tidy
Yeah.
Times. And then there's the book,
Get
Tidy
the
Up Your
book, people.
Life.
Get the book.
So
I'll put links to all of that, Tyler, in our show notes because I think what I love about our industry of decluttering and helping people to really set their values and then live according to those values is that the more voices you get, the more nuances that you pick up, and the more that you get to create kind of the way that you
mhm.
want to do it, because the way that you do decluttering in your life is different to the way that I do it, which is different to the way that somebody else does it. And so I'm like, listen to the people, like follow people, listen, understand, grow. And so, listeners, get onto all of Tyler's content. You're going to laugh. You're going to enjoy just the everyday. And also, like, I'm a little bit more inspired to up my cleaning game, Tyler. At the moment, my 18-year-old does most of he does our weekly clean. But in terms of like just, your daily habits of cleaning, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm upping my game.
Well, it is such a, I'm not saying low lift, but especially when you establish the routine, it's a way to make you feel successful before the
Yeah.
day go. Like there's nothing like sort of a short, quick burst to feel accomplished and then move on. So as I
Yeah.
like to say, if I've accomplished nothing else, I've at least cleaned the toilet, which I
You've
do
cleaned
every
the room.
Monday morning. Right. So
Yeah.
that if anything else happens, at least my toilet is clean. So.
Brilliant. And what a great place to finish. If nothing else, the clean toilet. uh,
Thanks for having me.
it's been a pleasure. Listeners, until next week, enjoy the freedom.